And imagine taking on a boarder in your own home only to suspect he was a killer. For author Pat Brown, that's how she got her start as a criminal profiler. She's here to share tips on how to stay safe and tell us about her new book, The Profiler: My Life Hunting Serial Killers and Psychopaths. So I have to say, what's a lovely lady like yourself doing hunting serial killers? Tell us about the boarder, because you were, this really got me as a mom. You and your husband living in Maryland, trying to find a way to make ends meet. Right. You wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, so you took in a boarder, and then a lot of things happened. Tell us about it.
Well, most of my boarders were great up until that point. I was a homeschooling mom.
No background in profiling?
Absolutely none. I had a liberal arts degree, was enjoying raising my children. I baked bread, made cookies, and I was really the homebody. And then I started studying medical sign language interpreting, so I did start doing that. But we didn't make enough money in this day and age to stay home, so we rented out rooms to international students. So we had a lot of people from China and from Iran and all kinds of places.
A great experience.
Wonderful, and they were all grad students and very quiet. And then we were adopting our third child, and he was 6 years old, and the foster care system said he couldn't come to our house unless everybody was fingerprinted. So it's very hard to say, oh, you're coming in from China, do you mind going down to the police station? You know, like, no.
Yeah.
So we suddenly had no renters, and we lost a huge amount of income. So my friend calls me up, she says, Pat, I just hired this guy at my place of employment, so I've seen all his work record. He's very personable, very nice, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't do drugs, and I'm dating him. And he wants to come closer to where we live, go to the church. So it sounded, okay.
Long story short, so we can get to the book, though.
Right.
But
so he moved in, and he was okay, and he was a little weird, but okay, so I'm not going to judge him. 4 weeks later, my friend broke up with him because she thought he was really weird. And she lived at one end of a bike path and I lived at the other. And he walked home that night and a woman was murdered right in the middle. She was raped and brutally murdered. And the next day I asked him if he was on the path and he said yes. And he actually said he was there exactly the same time the girl got murdered.
So again, long story short, we can talk about the book.
Yeah.
You go about doing your own investigation. You go to the police. You say, I think it's my boarder who killed this woman.
Well,
they wrote you off as a little housewife.
Not exactly. Okay. I didn't say I think it's him. I said, this is a very good this is a person you should be
worth
looking
investigating.
At. Worth investigating. He was on the path. He threw away his clothing right afterwards that was wet from the, he was in the stream. So take a look at him. He's very, very peculiar.
But they wrote you off.
They wrote me off.
6 years later.
6 years later, I got it reopened. The new investigator said, what the heck went wrong here? Brought the guy in, failed his polygraph. They said, they think this is the guy, and then they couldn't get the DNA.
So he did it. So how did that?
No. They couldn't get the DNA, so there's no proof that he did it. He now lives out free in society, lives about a mile away from me.
We're on to you, buddy.
But we don't know that he did it.
We don't know.
We don't know. I just wanted him.
We're just on to you.
I just wanted them to look at it.
Okay, so that sparked in you a passion for this whole field. So then what happened?
I found out there were all these dead women everywhere. I started looking around my town. I'm like, that didn't get solved, that didn't get solved, that didn't get solved. And I'm like, what's going on?
Okay, but most moms, at least me, would say, look away. I don't want to see all of this. It's too troubling. You dove right in.
Yeah, I was very frustrated because I believed in safety and I believe in justice. And I wanted to raise my children in that kind of a society, that we care about the people who are murdered. And this woman, when she got murdered, there was one article in the paper and no one ever heard about it again. It's like we didn't care that she got brutally murdered and died. And she was a brilliant intern at NASA. So, I mean, it's like, why don't we care? Why aren't we solving these cases? So I decided I would learn everything I could about this whole field. I wanted to become a criminal profiler then, and so I did.
And boy, did you. You're now considered one of the top criminal profilers in the country. Since I'm the substitute teacher, I didn't get to read the book in advance, but it's one of those where now I can't wait to go out, buy the book, and read it, because you've got stories in there not only about how fascinating your own career has been, but ways that all of us can be better educated about how to look for things that are suspicious. Right.
There's a lot of stories in the book about the family down the street and your own family maybe. This is where all the crimes occur. And I go in and I work on these cases, and it reads more like fiction than nonfiction, but I'm taking you behind the scenes and showing you how people think, what they do, how they behave, and what happened with these cases.
Because us as reporters, I usually cover Congress, the White House, the economy, but when I get to go on the cops and robbers beat, it's fascinating, and yet you always hear the same exact thing from neighbors. I would have never guessed.
Suspected.
They seemed fine. You say there are some hints. So let me ask you about some high-profile cases so we can get your opinion.
Sure.
Let's look at Yardley Love, the lacrosse player at UVA. The boyfriend has had a lot of things now come to the forefront about him. What sparked your interest in this, in hearing about that case? What would you have looked more closely at?
Well, there's always those indications as a child is even growing up that they feel entitled to everything. In other words, I should have everything. You shouldn't. That's my toy. Yeah. And they don't care if you cry. And as they get older, they get very manipulative. They become liars just because they think everything should be for them. They're always right. You're always wrong. They simply have no empathy for anyone else but themselves.
Okay,
that's
so
a big hint.
On that case, he's had some things that, regardless of whether he killed her or not, should have been looked at.
He definitely thought he was entitled to everything, including her, apparently.
Got to bring up JonBenét Ramsey, just because criminal profilers have been so interesting in talking to them over the years. Who do you think still deserves more scrutiny in that case? I
stand with the fact that there's no evidence there was an intruder in that house, that the Ramsey's behavior is extraordinarily odd, and that long 3-page very weird note is not the type of note anybody leaves except for somebody trying to cover up a crime. So I'm saying stay right back at square one and keep looking. My
completely unprofessional assessment is square with yours. So let's go for 3 out of 3, see if we all agree on this. Chandra Levy, took a long time for the police to finally come around to the person who's now in jail, who had been attacking other women in Rock Creek Park. What sparks your interest about that case? Did you ever suspect Gary Condit?
Yes. Gary Condit's behaviors also were strange. Where Chandra's body was left was really not where she should have been walking. It was more a place where you pull off and dump a body. I'm not entirely impressed with this suspect. Could it have happened? Yes, because if you're crawling around the park and you are raping, attacking women, it could have been him. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't see any evidence. So I'm waiting for that prosecution to come up with something rather than I just want to close this case and he's a creepy dude, so let's nail it on him. So I'm hoping we'll get a jury that really sits there and says, show me the evidence. He's a bad guy, but is he the bad guy that killed Chandra Levy?
Fascinating. You're a fascinating woman. The book is full, I'm told, by our great producers, of stories about some really gruesome things you had to work with and some really fascinating things. So
yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
a good read for all of us. I can't wait to go read it. Thanks so much for sharing it with us.
Glad to be here.